everybody. Greetings from Penang in Malaysia. The building that I just came out of has a very important role in the history of China, of all places. Anyone who has tracked the life and the history of Yat Sen, the father of modern China, the father of the nation, the forerunner of the republic as he's called in China, will realize that you actually have to go around the world several times, because he went around the world at least 3 times, literally, to raise funding and to inspire a whole generation of Chinese to bring the idea of a dynasty down and to turn China into a republic. And it was in Japan, of all places, that I came across a museum which celebrated Sun Yat-sen's relationship with Umeya Shokichi, who was a filmmaker and owner of movie studios and movie theaters, and made his fortune in Singapore, with which he was able to fund Sun Yat-sen's uprising, some of them in the early days. And to think that Sun Yat-sen also made his way into the US, where there was a Chinese Exclusion Act enforced at that time in order to raise awareness and raise fundings in the US. So it's just amazing that in those early days that the world was already global. And many of the geopolitical issues that we think about today in terms of the relationship between the US, China, Japan, Japan and the rest of the world, they were all being acted out in that time. And for those of us who see geopolitics in black and white, it was so interesting that some of Sun Yat-sen's most ardent supporters were Japanese, and that Southeast Asia had a role to play. Now, about Southeast Asia, very interesting. This was, at the turn of the previous century, the largest collection of Chinese migrants who left China, who went out to the rest of the world to seek their fortune. And just on the mainland side of this island, Penang, is an area called the Kinta Valley, where large numbers of Chinese explorers went in and built tin mines and made their fortune through tin mining and the ownership of plantations, and became independently wealthy. So the story of this, the meeting that took place in this building, was that by that time, Sun Yat-sen had totally exhausted all his sources of financial support. Everyone from his brother to his Japanese friends to the Americans. And he was down to raising money from the last possible pool of potential donors, and he found them here in Malaya, as it was called in that time. But before I continue to explain to you what I think I see or what I gather from visiting this building and other buildings in the neighborhood, which Sun Yat-sen hung around in the early 1900s, let's go in and have a look at what it looks like inside. The house is one in a series, in a terrace of Chinese townhouses that are still on a street that is still called Armenian Street, reflecting on the diaspora that existed during the British colonial period. And as we get into the house, you see that it's been lovingly restored, and this hallway is where there would be reading club sessions where illiterate Chinese immigrants would come here to have someone read the newspapers to them, and usually it's one of the revolutionaries who would also disseminate revolutionary ideas. And it is in this little hallway that Sun Yat-sen had that meeting in November of 1910, where he pleaded for support and raised $8,000, the equivalent of $8,000. And I'm told that this actually was the safe deposit box or something like that, in which some of that money was stored. The house was also chosen because it was long and part of a community where there could be any number of exits from which the revolutionaries could escape because they were constantly being watched by Qing dynasty agents and operatives who had been commissioned to kill them. And so the house lent itself to any number of activities and clandestine operations. But at the same time, it is a reflection of the elegance of straight-born Chinese who had been here for more than 400 years, who have imbibed a lot of the culture and the architecture of the Malay community who were originally in Southeast Asia. And so visiting this place is beautiful indeed. As I reflect on my visit into this building and other buildings in this neighborhood where Sun Yat-sen had spent a lot of his 1910-1911 period, and try to extrapolate what it should mean for us thinking about China today and extrapolating that into the future, the first thought that comes to my mind is just how impossible everything looked like to Sun Yat-sen in 1911. Today, looking back, we can attribute, we can ascribe with some form of certainty what the whole story was about. That, that he would topple the emperor and the country will go through its phases to become what it is today. But in 1911, looking forward, just imagine how impossible the whole situation would have looked like to Sun Yat-sen. He had failed in 9 uprisings. He had exhausted his sources of funding from his families, from his friends, and a whole range of people. And Malaya was his last resort. His uprisings were mostly in Guangdong province, and the emperor sits in Beijing. And overthrowing the emperor out there in the north was a totally different story. And on top of that, his fellow Tong members wanted to throw him out because they were done with his nice words, with his charm and his vision. And here he was telling the people that he met, please give me one last chance. And if that's not enough, when he finally was able to organize the uprising that actually resulted in the fall of the Qing dynasty was the Qinghai uprising. And Sun Yat-sen wasn't in China at that time. He was in the US, and the Qinghai uprising was organized by his contemporaries. And if that is not enough, overthrowing the Qing dynasty involved making a deal with the military commander in Beijing, Yuan Shikai, who also wanted to become president as part of the deal. To his credit, Sun Yat-sen did not see that his own interests were paramount. He was willing to do whatever was necessary to get the revolution going. And then after that, it was about 37 years of upheaval, civil war, invasion of Japan by the Japanese, and a whole range of economic malice before China became the nation state that it is today on the 1st of October 1949. And if that wasn't enough, from 1949 to about 1976, were a series of failed experiments that the Communist Party had to go through before it started to find its feet. So with these thoughts in my mind, I find it very difficult to subscribe to some of the comments that I hear about China being a very successful country, that is going to be the leading country of the world, that is going to overtake the US, as if that is at all important in the first place, and that it's going to be the defining civilization of our time. All of these based on about 24 and 14, 38 years of a 150-year story that is still in progress. So the first corollary that comes to mind is that China is still a work in progress. Even today, what I see is that a number of the institutional reforms that could have been done when the economy was good were not carried out. They were postponed. There was a judicial review in the 2014 period where the judiciary was being retrained to take on more responsibilities at the local grassroots levels. And that's been pushed back right now in favor of greater centralized control. And when we project into the future, the ambition apparently is to have full unification of China by 2049. Any number of things can happen between now and then. The second corollary that comes to mind is the role of individuals in shaping the history of a country or shaping the character of a country over a period of time. Now, these timelines in which China has evolved and developed, and how short the period of economic success has been in the overall scheme of things, I superimpose that on the story of Japan. Japan from 1904, when it defeated the Russians, it already had a very confident disposition about itself. To about the 1960s, when it actually became an economic force to be reckoned with, was a good 60-odd years. And in that period, a lot of institutional reforms needed to take place. And it's the reforms that didn't take place that resulted in Japan having the unfortunate history that it had in World War II. And two people stand out in my mind. One was a very young Minister of Education, Shimada Saburo, who was a very young Minister of Education at the age of 33, American educated, and trying to put in reforms to take the education system away from its samurai origins and that glorified militarism. Well, he was murdered in 1878. We only can imagine that if he had lived, that the grassroots support for militarism would have been very different in Japan if the education system had been revamped. And then there was a prime minister, the first civilian prime minister, Hara Takashi, who was appointed to make the country a lot more civilian driven. He was murdered in 1921. And when you take these personalities out, the country looks very different. And the history of the country went through a phase that was very painful before it was able to realize its full potential. Now, China has a very different basis, a very different seedbed. After the Cultural Revolution, the leaders who transformed the country were economists, a lot of them. And the education system that the next generation was put through had a lot to do with sciences, the math, the engineering, to prepare them for a future in technology. So with that as the seed, when you extrapolate China into the next 150 years, I think we have a reason to believe that the best is yet to be. But there is still work in progress. Just as an aside, we are standing here in Malaysia, right, today. This is a country that had a very promising future after the colonial era. The British had put in place a very good education system, rule of law, social infrastructure like healthcare and all of that. And it just took one prime minister who ruled for 24 years, Mahathir bin Mohamad, to introduce corruption as an endemic problem into this country. And he's taking all the effort of grassroots organizations and the new set of leaders to try and pivot the country back to its course to realize its full potential. So I would look out for personalities who will make a difference in the future of a country. To discuss China in geopolitical terms, as if it's a contest between two countries and a contest between two civilizations, and that the result of that contest is the supremacy of one over the other. It's both unhelpful and that is not borne out by the way in which the world is coming together. Any number of countries, India, Indonesia, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, even Vietnam, have ambitions of their own. The responsibility that all countries owe to their people is to bring out the full potential of the individuals in these countries, to give them the confidence that they will have a place in the local society and realize their full potential eventually. And when we think about humanity as a whole, the sum of the parts have to add up into something that is cohesive for all of humanity. The idea of a Thucydides trap is total Western rubbish, taken out of context of two warring factions in the Peloponnesian War and trying to apply that to a modern economic situation. And it's the Western mindset that wants to see civilizations as constantly at tension with each other. And I think that if Sun Yat-sen was still alive, he would probably promulgate a new vision, not just for China, but for humanity as a whole. And finally, one fun fact about Sun Yat-sen was that, man, he was really very good with the women. I guess it comes from the personality of revolutionaries, Simon Bolivar, Che Guevara. Just as a digression, I understand that Lee Kuan Yew, the founding father of Singapore, modern day Singapore, his wife used to like reading fiction and stories about some of these revolutionaries and the passion that goes on with it. Or maybe because of that, Lee Kuan Yew never had a woman member in his cabinet all the time that he was prime minister. But I digress. The story is that Sun Yat-sen had mistresses wherever he spent time in. He had at least two in Japan. And then when he moved here to Malaya, the woman who helped him was a contemporary of his in university who fell in love with him while he was still in university. And that's how charming and vision and foresighted he was. And her name was Chen Chui-fen. She eventually moved to Ipoh and spent time here in Penang with him. And used all her charm and her resourcefulness to get the attention and the support and the funding from the tycoons in this part of the country. She wasn't really mistress, she was up there, but she wasn't wife either, but a very important part of his life story. And then when he moved to Beijing, he found one of the three Soong sisters, Soong Ching-ling, who was actually the daughter of Charlie Soong, who was Sun Yat-sen's mentor. So you can imagine what his father-in-law thought of him when he put his hand into the family chicken coop, and took one of his daughters. And as it turned out, when Sun Yat-sen died when he was 57, Soong Ching-ling was only 30 years old, very young. And she dedicated the rest of his life to ensuring his legacy. And the communist government co-opted her to assuage their own credibility and their own right to rule. The other side of the equation is the role of women in China. You see this story repeated, replicated again and again, even in modern China. Think of any successful business, any successful politician, any successful civil leader, and you will see women supporting them to help them realize their goal, their mission. And I think that the reason is China has got probably the largest cohort of highly competent, highly driven, highly creative women who seek to make the most of their own lives. And so it is that when they attracted to someone with vision. And that person doesn't need to be a man, it can be another woman. They latch on to it because they need to stand out from the rest of society. And in that regard, that's a part of the Chinese story that gets replicated even to this day. So those are my thoughts about Sun Yat-sen and how to think about geopolitics and how everything eventually comes together to bring out the potential and the best in any people. Let me know what you think. And until I see you another time, another day, and another place, bye for now.